We started. So I wanted to do this live session tonight to talk about something that is usually a little bit underrated and not very well discussed from excuse me um, when you study to become a conductor, and that is marking the score. Actually, my first teacher was totally against marking anything. He used to say, I don't mark anything. I study, I put everything in my head, and the score is as pristine and white as the day that I bought it, which worked very well for him, but it just didn't work for me actually. And then I got a few other suggestions along the way, and this was many years ago. Um, and then I ended up, like more or less everyone does, finding your own solution, which is what works for you the best. I'm a great advocate of marking the score uh, because it helps me immensely in studying, in preparing, in visualizing certain things, especially when you have very complicated scores. And it helps me also memorizing it. So one of the tricks, so to speak, that I use is colors. And I use different colors for different things. So for instance, I mark the meter change, 4/4, 3/4, 2/4, or the accelerando, rallentando, all these tempo related changes with a green pastel. And I mark the dynamics in red, and I mark the cues in blue. And then I have other things. For instance, if I have a very large score, sometimes I divide, and by large score, I mean something with some 20 or 30 even staves on it. So sometimes I actually also draw an horizontal line between the sections. And for instance, when I have a score of an opera or a score that has a singer, I usually highlight the singer's words. And all of this helps me not just studying it, but helps me memorizing it, which is something we'll get to in a little bit. So actually, yeah, here it is. Now this is a very simple one, simple so to speak, but it's a very simple score. It doesn't have any particular thing, but this is one thing that I also do. You guys see these little pencil signs at the top? Yeah, that's bar grouping. This is a page from the first movement of Beethoven 5. As you know, it's in one, right? Right? Okay. And when a score is in one, it's very helpful also, not just for yourself, but also for the players, to group the phrases, sorry, in well, let's say in patterns, so to speak. So in this case, here we have a 4 bars phrase. Here we have a 2 bar phrase. So if I actually, instead of doing always 1 1 1 1 1, actually in this case a pattern can actually become useful in this case. 1 2 3 4 1 2, and then you are on an arrival point on the forte. And by grouping bars in this way, you have the advantage of following the phrasing, of showing the phrasing to the players. And when you study, you mark it, and then you learn it. It's easier to learn instead of just seeing a series of 1 bars. This is another example. This is from the first movement of Taras Bulba, Janacek's Taras Bulba. Now, this is a little more complex of a score, comparatively speaking, in terms of orchestration, in terms of cueing, in terms of tempo changes as well. compared to Beethoven. But for instance, in this one, you see I have a red marking here, an orange marking here because there's a very important entrance of the snare drum. Then I have another red marking here, and these are different. These are mezzo forte, this is pianissimo, and then there's a solo. Here it goes in 4, pushing forward, a line, splitting the score. It's yeah, it can become very colorful at times, depending on the type of score that you have in front of you. And here's another thing. Do you see these lines going down? This is a way to, for me, to identify the phrase when I'm studying. So in this case, the phrase is a 3 bars phrase. And I actually note it down. It's especially useful for music that moves around a bit, moves the bar line or the bar phrasing a lot, and contemporary music that has a lot of these things. So when you first approach the score, that's a very good way to split the score in sort of in blocks. And this is an example of one of my scores of an opera. Actually, this is an opera that premiered almost 20 years ago. It was, of course, a contemporary piece. As you see, it has a lot of changes in terms of meter. This is the baritone line, in this case, highlighted. And all of the rest, the dynamics are in red, the cues are in blue, and so forth. And this is my approach, or personal approach, that I actually developed throughout the years. It works for me. It works really well. I know some of my colleagues have more or less the same approach. Maybe they don't split, or they use different colors, or they use the same color for the same things. It doesn't really matter. In the end, you have to find what really works for you in this case, because you are the one who's reacting to what's on the page. So where I'm reacting to, for now it's a sort of automatic reflex. I see the green thing and I know that it's a tempo change or it's a meter change. I see the red thing, I know it's a dynamic change. I see the blue thing, I know it's a cue. But that's because I react to these things in this way. But this could be a good starting point, or something that you guys can integrate in your own personal method or approach of marking a score. This little thing up here is another reminder, because this bar is in 5/8, but is actually conducted in 2+3. So this is a reminder that the first part of the bar is in 2, 1, 2, and the second half of the bar is 1, 2, 3. Is in 3. All of these things are very small things, small tricks, small tips, small things that you can do to help yourself, basically, and ease yourself into learning a score, because it's much easier to, especially when you go back after years, because sometimes, see, it happens sometimes that you learn a score, you conduct it once, twice, and then it goes there and it stays there for maybe 10 years. And then when you come back and you see all the signs that you put in, then a lot of things are triggered, and you're not starting from zero anymore. You're not starting from scratch. There's a lot of, I sometimes put notes on the side of the score. This usually happens with opera, stage things, and or particular needs and necessities of the singers. This is a whole different chapter, actually, but this is something that is really important when you work with singers. You got to mark when they need to breathe if it's a particularly difficult or tough spot, so that you can actually prepare it for them and react when you're in performance. That's another sign that goes, another little pencil thing that goes in the score during rehearsal. Now, when I actually prepare a score, the first thing, if it's a new score, totally new, something like I'm preparing now, actually, I have a concert next month. I'm preparing 2 new pieces. And by new, I mean contemporary. And I've never conducted them. They are from live composers. One was written a year ago, 2 years ago, I don't know. And another one was written 10 years ago. So for me, our new piece is completely brand new. And what I do when I have new pieces, I sit down, I look through the entire score in order to get the sense of it, the big picture, and then I move down into the smaller details. Starting with, for instance, the phrasing, or if there are particularly significant tempo changes. Maybe there's an abrupt tempo changes from, I don't know, you go from adagio to presto, for example. Or there's a big rallentando, or you see a rallentando and a accelerando that goes on for 3 pages. All these things, these big gestures. There's a fortissimo with full orchestra at one point with sforzatissimo and everybody playing at the same time. All of these big gestures are big moments that help identify where the score is going and where the music is going, and it helps you identify a path, the path on which you enter when you raise the baton. So after I went through first reading, and then I started with the blocking of the piece. And this is very similar, by the way, to what you do, to what directors do when they prepare an opera with the cast. The first few rehearsals are called blocking, and it's where they sort of tell people, okay, you stay on this side, you stay on this side, you stay in the middle, roughly. So it's the big picture of the big blocks of the composition, the structure, and then we start going into the details. Big phrases, small phrases, inner phrasing, cues, dynamics. You look at the orchestration, of course, and you reduce at every pass of the read of the score that you make. You reduce gradually, and you go deeper into each detail, but you never start from the detailed part. You always start from the big picture. Otherwise, you're going to get lost, and you lose track of the big picture. So basically, you end up not knowing where you're going, which is what we have to do. We start on a path, and we have to know where the path ends in order to get there. And if you start from the middle in the middle of the road, and you look at a little pebble and on the street, then you have no chance, basically, right? The other thing that this brings, and this is something that I like to do whenever I have enough time and whenever I can do it, is memorizing a score. Because conducting from memory, I mean, some things are incredibly difficult to conduct from memory, and some things are almost impossible unless you have photographic memory, like Lorraine Mazel did. Or Abbado was one that was really known for his memory. I mean, he conducted Moses and Aaron from memory, which is not exactly a small. It's not exactly a walk in the park. But generally speaking, I do like to memorize a score and conduct from memory whenever I can. And this process of starting from the big picture and going to small things, marking with the blocking, with the phrasing, with the bars or with the bar lines or with the bar phrasing at the top is of great help. One thing that I would really suggest and encourage not to do is studying with the recording, because that is one of the most perilous things that and dangerous thing for yourself that you can do. Because when you study with the CD or with CD or with the recording, with the streaming, doesn't matter, but when you study with the recording, you acquire somebody else's interpretation and it cannot be yours. So you end up um, molding yourself on that recording in order to learn it. And that is really not something that it's not something that not just you should do. It's not something that any conductor should do, because you want to do your own interpretation. You don't want to do somebody else's. You want to be your own conductor, your own person, your own musician. That's what you have. That's unique. That's what you have that you need to bring out. And if you study with somebody else's recording, I'm not saying that listening to recordings is a bad thing. I mean, that's not what I'm saying. Actually, it's a really good thing to listen to other conductors, to go see colleagues. Well, when that will be possible, again in a live concert. But it's a very good thing. And now we have every possible means at our disposal to listen to recordings from the 50s, from the 60s, even from before, some of them, of quite a good quality because they have been polished, and a plethora of recordings from the 70s up to yesterday. So there's really plenty of choice to listen to other people, other conductors' interpretation of the same piece. But trying to learn a piece just by listening to a recording, which, by the way, is something that a lot of singers do, and it's really dreadful. Anyway, trying to do that is really dangerous for your own interpretation. So when you try to memorize a score, you don't memorize it. You can't memorize it one bar at a time. You have to start with, I don't know, one phrase, two phrases, start from then move to the third phrase, then go back to the first phrase and repeat all three of them. And one thing that really helps is singing it out loud. It doesn't matter if you're not a singer. Nobody gives a shit if you're not a singer. I sing in front of the orchestra too when there is something that I can't get across. Then that's the ultimate resource. You sing it with the intention that you want it. They understand, and it doesn't matter. Nobody expects you to sing like Pavarotti. That's not. If you listen, by the way, if you go on YouTube and listen to, there's a fantastic rehearsal, Toscanini rehearsing La Traviata, where he sings with the orchestra. He's rehearsing just the orchestra, not with the choir. And he sings the part of the choir, Il coro delle zingarelle. Noi siamo zingarelle. He's so freaking out of tune. It's unspeakable. But it doesn't matter. And it's not the recording. He's really out of tune compared to the orchestra. So you have a direct reference there of what the pitch is. But it doesn't matter, because that's not the point. The point is the intention. The point is where the phrase is going, where you want it to go. And the musicians will pick up on that, and then they'll repeat and they'll play and they'll be fine. So when you study at home and you're trying to memorize a score, for instance, singing it out loud and conducting it at the same time, if you wish, it's a very good way to put it in your head, because that's anyway what you have to do when you're conducting. When you're conducting, you're not singing out loud, but you have it in your head. You have a sound image, a sonic image in your head of what it is that you expect. And you're hearing that in your head before the orchestra plays it. That's how you compare what the orchestra plays with what's in your head, and that's how you can say, okay, I like this because it adheres to the image that I have in my head of this piece, or it doesn't because, I don't know, the oboe is too loud. Uh, so this is a very it's a mental exercise, but it's something that if you play an instrument, you do that almost automatically. You sing it in your head. You sing it in your head before you play it, because otherwise you don't know where you're going. And if you play, even more so, if you play an instrument where you make part at least of the intonation with your lips, uh, you play the horn, you sing through it the whole freaking time, because that's how the pitches come out. And you have to do that when you're conducting as well. So you have it in your head, you anticipate in your head what's about to happen, then you hear the response of the orchestra, you compare it, and you correct it or you accept it. And this all of this happens, of course, in a split of a second. Uh, but this is the process, and trying it at home helps a great deal. Another thing that, and this is a different type of trick, when you have really complex scores like this one, for instance, and you want to memorize it, this is a page from the last part of the Rite of Spring. uh, it goes from 2/8 to 3/16 to 5/16 to 2/8, but it's a dance that has its rhythm inside it. But when you have to learn it, and you have to learn it, and you want to memorize it, this is something that can be really, well, challenging. Yes. Uh, so I did that, and when I wanted to memorize this, at one point, I used a different trick. I started singing this and conducting it by myself, and I put a Mozart symphony on the radio. A Mozart symphony that, like the Jupiter Symphony, something that you know by heart, something that you automatically start humming along when you hear it, because that is something that is potentially distracting you from this. And if you can memorize and go through, and if you can sing through the Rite of Spring while listening to something like a Mozart symphony, then you really know it. Really know it from memory, because then you have to consider one other thing. One thing is approaching it and singing it and doing it in your own living room or in your room, and the totally different thing is doing it when you're in front of the orchestra. That's why you have to be sort of train yourself to the worst possible solution, to the worst possible situation when you're studying. Because when you get in front of the orchestra, a lot of things go by themselves. However, you have plenty of visual inputs that can potentially distract you. And the second thing is, something can always go wrong somewhere, for some reason. It happens all the time that somebody drops something in the orchestra. A mouthpiece goes down. Horn players, speaking about the horn, they have to clean the pipes. They take the thing out when they're not playing, and they shake it so it cleans out. A part falls. We've seen videos of people playing Mahler, and the freaking hammer goes up in the air and hits the poor guy that stays in the front on the head. So there's plenty of, and this is a live performance, mind you, it's not a rehearsal. There's plenty of things that come in and can distract you. So if you can't afford, if you memorize it, especially if you memorize something like this, you can't afford to know it 100%. You have to know it 150%. You have to know it in a way that no matter what happens around you, you're not going to get distracted, and you're not going to lose your footing into this, and your brain will always be in that, ready to snap and correct whatever it is, whether it's a wrong entrance, that happens too, or something else that happens, some other accidents that happen along the way. So this is more or less what I wanted to share actually with you guys. And if you have any questions, please, by all means, go ahead.
So, I mean, I may have missed this. Do you do a harmonic analysis as well to
Yes,
help inform the phrase structures?
Yeah, that is definitely part. That is, of course, part. I sort of took that for granted, but
Yeah.
Of course, part of the process. Yes.
And you know how you're saying you move from big kind of structures into smaller structures?
Yes.
Is there a way that you show that hierarchy in the score with, say, for your vertical lines, color coding for that, or you just remember because of the process that you've gone through where those big points are that you kind of want to hit?
No, I actually do remember where they are. The unless there is really something big, I generally don't color code the line that go down. But if it helps you, why not?
No, this is interesting.
The score is yours. You bought it. You can buy whatever you want on it.
Yeah.
Whatever helps. That I don't write, but because I remember by studying it the way I do, I know where the phrase is going, and I know where the arrival point is. The arrival point, of course, it's usually, with since you mentioned it, fortissimo, full orchestra, blast, whatever. So there is a big dynamic impact, and there are dynamic markings on it. And look, I also have to say that this is a process that changes during the years, because I used to mark the scores a lot more than I do now. I mean, my scores are not lightly marked, but I used to mark them even more. But then I got to the point where the markings were distracting because there was too much marking. And so I started to thin it out a bit and actually mark what is really important. Because otherwise, it's like highlighting everything in the same color, right? Then everything looks the same again, and there is no point in it. It's just like having it white. So, and some things I actually now see in easier, perhaps, than I used to. I suppose that comes also with experience. It's one of the perks of aging, I guess. So for some things, I need less markings. But I mean, if you need to mark a big spot, mark a big spot.
And I mean, I completely agree with you about I do lines in my score as well. But what would you say? You know how Eric Leinsdorf says, oh, don't do lines. And I do lines. I agree with you. But what do you kind of say to that sort of criticism?
Oh, that's the
composer's advocate.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe your Wi-Fi was out, so you didn't catch this at the beginning.
Oh, right. Sorry.
No, it's okay. What I started with was that my very first teacher was totally against marking anything, absolutely anything in the score. The score was there to be studied, absorbed, but it was not to be tampered with or marked with, not even in pencil. And I'm like, yeah, it worked for him.
Yeah.
But in the end, I'm the one who needs to mark the score, and I'm the one who needs to learn the score now,
Yeah.
not him or Leinsdorf for that matter. He's
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
this is this is not something that is equal for everybody. This is something that is that can be a lot different for everyone, because we all react to different things. We have different ways of thinking, and some of my markings that make sense for me, and I react to them. They might make no sense at all or have any impact on you, for instance. So this is an example, but this is what I do, and this works for me. And if it works for you, all the better. But if it doesn't work for you and you find a different marking that works for you, by all means, use it. You have a certain type of reaction to something. You have a certain type of photographic memory, perhaps, and somebody else doesn't. I do remember. I don't have a photographic memory, as in like really, those ones that you read the newspaper page, you see the newspaper page one, and then you can copy it down, you can write it down. I don't have that, but I do have a pretty good memory and pretty good visual memory. So I also remember where the page turns are. And when I conduct from memory, a lot of time I'm not actually remembering, but I'm reading it, even if I don't have the score, because I sort of see, and also because I have the visual aid of my markings. So, there is in the first movement of the second symphony, of Mahler's Second Symphony, there is a point where everybody has a comma. It's a breath that the entire orchestra takes. Off. 2 bars. Off. It happens twice. And I missed it the first time that I did it in rehearsal. At the first rehearsal, I missed one of them. Distraction, whatever. First time that you do a Mahler symphony, it's not exactly a piece of cake, and I missed it. Nothing happened. We do it again, but I marked it, and then I made a marking like it was like this big, with an orange circle. Remember this thing. We get to the performance. I do it from memory, and as we get there, I see the marking passing in front of my eyes, because it pops. It pops out. It was just a visual aid, but and this happened at least to me in other occasions as well, when I was conducting, and you sort of see the score in front of you, even if you don't have it, because some things just stay imprinted in your mind, but they also stay imprinted because you spent quite a bit of time curved on it, and quite a bit of time going through what's in it and what is what, and oh look, there's an accent there, but there's not an accent in the bassoon. These kind of details, then this is where you go into real details, and then they help you memorize everything. Sorry, I actually went a little off.
No, it's great.
Thank you so much. From your original question, but anyways, so yeah, what do I respond to that criticism? I do what I want to do. The score is mine. I have to study. I do whatever I want to it to help me studying it.
No, it's great. It's really honest as well. It's nice. Thank you.
Oh, look, it's really easy, or really easy. It's really, it can be really, I don't know, glamorous, if you wish, to pretend to be something like maybe Leinders or Toscanini, who could read it and just remember it just like that. But we're not all like that. And Abbado himself, who did have a great photographic memory, he himself admitted more than once that despite the memory that he had, the part of the memory, that the good memory that he had in remembering scores, was because he studied a lot. So he spent a lot of time on them, and I really don't find anything. I don't know, to be ashamed of in that respect. I need a lot of time to study a score. I need a lot of time to study a score. That's it. I'll put in all the time that I need. If you need 2 hours, you need 2 hours. If you need 2 weeks, you start ahead of time and you use the 2 weeks that you need. I mean, I have a concert next month. After that, I'm starting. I'll go back to study or to start to refresh the score of Rigoletto, which I have to conduct a production of next June. That'll be 7, almost 8 months from then. But last time that I did Rigoletto was 5 years ago. I need to go back to it. I need to redo it, and I need to get myself back into the whole opera in studying it. So, I'll start ahead of time. It's,
Great, thank you.
yeah, of course. Any other question?
Not so far. This has been very straight ahead and very helpful.
I'm glad.
I did think of one question. Do you sing through each line individually, or play at the piano each line individually, or try to play block at the piano?
Yeah, sometimes I do try to block something at the piano, but first of all, I'm not a pianist. I did take some piano, yes, but I'm not a pianist myself. Actually, first instrument was violin. And then I took piano on the side because it was required, but I'm not really a pianist. I can read through some stuff, but so yes, if the ears don't work internally, then I actually put my hands in the piano, and especially if there are some weird harmonies. It does happen in some scores. If you look into Janacek, he has these weird harmonies of 9 and 13ths without the fifth of the chord that sort of throws you off a little bit, because it seems one thing, but then it's actually a different one. So then I put my hands on the piano to hear it better. Singing through one line, singing through each line, it depends. It depends on what the line is actually, because if it's then I don't. But if it gets a little more complicated, if it gets more complicated than that, more complex, then you can. It's also a matter of, you have to hear it in your head, and you know it in your head if what you hear is everything that's on the score. So when you go through the score and you singing it in your head, you're reading it, because effectively when you're reading a score in your head, you're singing it in your head, and you're hearing, and you're trying, and you should be hearing everything that's in it. So if you get to a point in a phrase where you look down at the score and what's in your head, you say, shit, what the hell is the tuba playing there? And you can't figure it out in your head, then sing it. Then you sing that line separately. And then you'll realize it, oh, right, that's what the tuba is playing there. Because sometimes it's actually really easy to get lost into these things. So yeah, singing a line at a time. If you can't hear it, it definitely helps. Yes. And one thing that also helps is to sing the line that needs to come out when it bounces from one instrument to another, so that you have the full line, regardless of which instrument is playing. You have the phrasing, the direction, and then you can say, okay, 2 bars to the flute, 3rd bar to the clarinet, 4th bar to the oboe, or whatever. But you have the picture. and then you zoom into the different cues. But then if you sing it, then you sing the entire line. You don't sing 2 bars and then you stop because there's a bar of rest, for instance, right? So yeah, it's thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Have a nice evening. Bye.